Welcome to episode 9 of Bernie's Bums. Olivia, how's it going?
Hanging in there. How about yourself?
Oh, it's a action-packed day, so I'm good, bad, ugly, everything all in between. Let's get it started. Let's start with some good news. What do you think?
All right.
All right, Mr. James Nelson is back on the mound on Wednesday.
Oh,
It's
I'm
been
excited.
a long, long time for him, so it's great to see not only his recovery through baseball, but a lot of the things that he went through in the process with everything ended up okay from what it sounded like with his wife and his children. But for those of you that didn't know, Jimmy Nelson and his family had a big time scare where his the lives of his wife and his recently born twin children were kind of on the line for a little bit, which is a very scary thing as for anybody, but you know especially for someone going through it. So I feel for him, and it's something that everything turned out good, and everything's going in the right direction. That's great to see, and now he's back on the mound too. So that's another celebration he can add to his list over the past few months. So that's an awesome thing. So we'll get into a little bit more about Jimmy Nelson later on. Um, let's talk about the news that unfolded today. Mr. Keston Hira is no longer with the Brewers. Now he's not traded or anything. However, he was sent down to AAA to clear room for the 160 hitter Travis Shaw. How do you feel about this?
I mean, it's killing me. That's the thing. It makes sense why they did it, and I think that's why I haven't jumped off a bridge yet about it. But it's still killing me. Like he like performed so well, and he like met, I think, at least my expectations. Like he just kept hitting, and then he showed off his power, and then he hit a little bit more, and then his at bats were so good, and it just kills me to see that. But at the same time, it was a good business decision. So I don't know. I'm still angry about it, but it makes sense in the long run why it all went down the way it did.
Yeah, it's frustrating to see. I was not a very happy camper to start. I wish I had him in front of me, but you all know who Ryan Braun is. He was a pretty good rookie when he came up, and he came up halfway through, um, and ended up winning Rookie of the Year and was an MVP candidate. Ryan Braun's stats, and again, I apologize for not having him with me. Ryan Braun's stats, from what I saw this weekend as a rookie, were comparable to what Keston here is putting up offensively and honestly defensively, which is a big reason why I think they were able to make this move. So defensively, he has made some very good plays. Not going to discredit him. Um, However, that is, um, I don't think that that's something that he's going to be known for. Let's say so. In his, let's see, I got it right here. In his appearances, he has played in 17 games, and he has 4 errors already. That's not something that is going to play well at the big league level. And I don't know. I'm assuming that's going to be something that's going to be a focus when he's down. Is you got to be able to play the field at the big league level. And I know he was forced into some tough situations at times, but 4 errors in 17 games isn't something that's going to work out too well at the big league level. Because when that all boils down, you got a 942 fielding percentage. That's not too great especially for a second baseman. Um, but that being said, offensively he was like that good. So it's hard to deny that. However, this is a good situation that the Brewers have where they have the ability to flex him down and more than likely not skip a beat. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were all clear from the beginning that he's never going to win a Gold Glove in his career. I think we were all pretty clear on that from the beginning. So as much as the errors sting, I don't know. I think his offense makes up for it. It's kind of the same thing with Grandal in the pass balls, where you just expect his offense to pick up whatever defects he has on the defensive side of the ball. So I think in perspective, you can kind of even it out too, because you have a great defender in Orlando Arcia right next to him. So I think those two even out, and you can, with the shift, you can move around pieces. So Keston maybe isn't in as many like big play situations where maybe you're putting him in a bad situation.
Yeah, and that's definitely, that's the beauty of all the shifting and everything like that. But I think it might end up being, and now that you brought it up, and this is just not even something I've really thought about, it just kind of popped in my mind. Do we think possibly this could be a trend for guys coming up, where a guy can just mash, and just based off of shifts and whatnot, it makes it easier to hide a second baseman? I don't know. I mean, you saw it with the Brewers last year, where they're able to put Moose or Shaw there, and that's not discrediting their ability there, especially Moustakas. I was blown away by how good he was there when they were playing him there. So I don't know. It'll be. I'm intrigued, to say the least, and we'll talk about Travis Shaw, and when he's in. I guess let's talk about him a little more now. He in AAA during his rehab appearance hit 4 for 23. Now, if we're looking straight stats, that's not very promising. Now, we have talked on this podcast before, and I'm going to use Jeremy Jeffress as an example, and Jimmy Nelson coming up, but we don't know what Jimmy Nelson is going to do. But Jeremy Jeffress had a rocky outings when he was down there, and he's been pretty good for the Brewers this year. He's been your typical Jeremy Jeffress that you've expected over the years. Now, it's a little alarming to see these different things when he was giving up runs. He gave up more runs than he did innings pitched. For Shaw, he's continuing to do the same thing that he was doing before. Is that something that's a red flag for you, or is it, let's let him hit up here and see what happens?
Honestly, when it comes to me, I look more at the quality of at bats than I do more of the outcome. Like, obviously, production is what you need. But if you look at the quality of an at bat, and you see them taking good pitches and swinging at the good ones, and like having a quality at bat and taking up pitches, the outcome for me can differ. But I think it's all kind of dependent on that. I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to tell from like AAA numbers. I don't have that in front of me. But when he was up here before, like his at bats were horrific, like horrific. And I think it'll depend for me to see how it is when he comes up, and I kind of see a couple of his at bats and how he's doing.
Right. Well, and he just talked about when he was up, he's like, just not like nothing feels right. I'm watching film, this, and that, and it's just not working right now, and I don't know what to do. And that's a pretty scary place to be as a ball player, or just really anywhere in life. If you're really not sure what is going on and how to get out of a rut, that's tough. So I hope whatever it is he gets figured out, and he can make himself a fixture in the lineup. Again, something just kind of off the top of my head, I was looking through just different players, and like while we had been talking, and I stumbled upon a guy who's been around the league for a while, and that's Howie Kendrick. It's a really random name to bring up, I know, but along with that, Gerardo Parra, again, another random name. I want to preface this by saying Gerardo Parra is 5'11", and Howie Kendrick is 5'10". Based off of what we're seeing with the Brewers offense, there's one person in particular who is really, really, really not producing. Do you have any guesses on who that person may be?
Like, are we talking in the lineup every day, or
not necessarily every day? He's not every day.
Okay, then I'm
Used to
gonna
be.
go Aggie.
Aguilar.
Yeah.
Correct. Now, Jesus Aguilar does not look like those two men. Jesus Aguilar is a big guy. He's about 6'3". However, he is not producing nearly to the level of a guy like Howie Kendrick. What's interesting about Howie Kendrick is even though he's 5'10", he's now playing first base for the Washington Nationals. Same thing with Gerardo Parra, who had just gotten picked up after struggling, and now he's starting to hit for them a little bit too. So you have two guys that are under 6 feet tall that are playing first base for you. Is that an ideal situation? Probably not. But you have two guys that are hitting and doing that, and especially Howie Kendrick. And last time I checked, Keston here is about 6 feet tall. And he's a right-handed bat, just like Jesus Aguilar. Is that something that could possibly be a situation where we see him come up surface again? Could that be something that they work on down in AAA again? This is just something that kind of popped into my head. What are your thoughts on that? If he were to pop over to first base,
To be honest, I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
there's a lot. I led you
Until
down a
like
rabbit hole.
till about the last second, but I mean, logistically, it makes sense. Like, kind of in the head, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, when you're so young, I don't know if it's necessarily in the Brewers' best interest, like at the moment, to kind of throw first base on him when he's kind of so young, not impressionable, but like I don't know. I feel like there's a lot that goes on in like a young ball player's head, so I don't know if
Yeah.
it's necessarily the smartest idea, but like logistically, it makes sense. But
Mm-hmm.
in reality, I don't know if right now is the right time. Who knows in the future, the way the Brewers work. But right now, I don't know. I feel like that would be a rough idea for a young player.
And, I'm not saying one way or another what to do, but, counterpoint to that, maybe that's the best time for it, where you're able to mold a guy to be able to transition back and forth. But I also see both sides of it. And, do I think it's going to happen? No, but it's definitely a thought. Just seeing that where the Brewers are was just we need to get bats in the lineup. And that could be an opportunity to get him in the lineup. That being said, first base spot, the other guy who plays there, who also isn't that tall, he's hitting really well. That would be Eric Thames. He is hot. Over his last four. Over the Brewers' last seven, his last four. He's got 2 bombs, got 5 hits and 11 at bats, 2 bombs, 4 RBI. He's walked 3 times, done his share of striking out as he does. But his OPS is 1662 right now, and he's getting on base. He's scoring runs, 5 runs in 4 games. And he's been producing pretty well, and that's against everybody. Is he the guy to take over that first base spot, or are we going to continue to see the ebbs and flows of him being really, really, really good or really, really, really bad?
Well, when you're reading off those numbers right there, I paid attention to the walks. I think, and I've talked about this before, and I'm probably repeating myself a billion times, but when I start to see a player walk more, and when I start to see a player get more extra base hits and altogether get more bases, that's how I can tell that a player knows, is first of all prepared before every game, knows what's coming, knows the pitchers, feels good, and just overall is performing well. So I think when I hear all that about Thames, it makes me have a really positive outlook that it might not be just a hot streak. Sure, he may cool off a little bit, but when I hear that, it makes me think that he can maybe keep something of that pretty stable over the course of the year.
No, I don't, and that'd be great. I don't necessarily disagree with you on it, but when you look at Eric Thames over time, what has he done? If he's going to get a hit, it's going to be an extra base hit, right? If he gets a
Okay.
hit, it's going to be an extra base hit. He's going to walk. He's going to strike out. In 11 at bats, he's walked 3 times, struck out 5 times. So that means only one of his at bats that he got out wasn't a strikeout, and he's had 3 extra base hits out of his five hits. Great, like that's awesome. However, you're still seeing the strikeout numbers, and me seeing the strikeout numbers being that high and him not being Mike Trout or Christian Yelich, that is still a little alarming to me because it's such a, you have that as such an unproductive out. So again, he gives complete credence to the idea of the three true outcome being that he's going to homer, strike out, or walk, and if he can continue to homer and walk more than he strikes out, then great, you have a good guy on your hands. However, I just get nervous with him, even though I love him. Like, he's irrationally one of my favorite players. I think it's just because he's a cool dude. But the sustainability, I think you and I are on different ends of that. Of like, I don't necessarily see it being as sustainable as I think you do, which that's okay. I hope you're right.
But
So
one thing that I always take into account with him, if we can go back for a second,
yeah, for sure,
is whether he pays attention to it or not, is part of your quote unquote launch angle craze, where he has an extreme uppercut swing, like extreme to the extreme. And that's how that swing performs from a strikeout standpoint.
Right.
But if he, like what you were saying before, if he is able to overcome that with getting extra base hits and walking and all in all hitting homers, I think you've got yourself at the moment with the situation the Brewers have. You don't need him to be the guy he was way back in 2017. Like, you don't need that like stable home run bat anymore. And I think that's what I look at it. Like, as of right now, you have a stable first baseman in a position that you've struggled with inconsistency for a little while.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you got to ride him for everything it's worth at this point. Like, you can't afford to take him out of the lineup. Like, he's mashing and keeping himself in there, and that's great. And I'm so happy to see that. And I hope he continues to do it and is someone that's effective for the entire season. I just, like you said, with those, we talk about the launch angle, we talk about these different things. That always makes me a little nervous and skeptical about what we're going to see in the future from him. Anyway, next thing. The next series we got coming up is against the Marlins, who, weirdly enough, are playing well. They're possibly the worst team. They are quite possibly the worst team since I remember watching baseball that I've seen roll out onto a field. And that's like comparable to the early 2000s Brewers, who were really, really bad, but I love them, so they didn't seem as bad. This is a really bad team. This and the Baltimore Orioles from last year specifically, I have no words for how they're 5-2 in their last 7. I don't understand. And they were like red hot and went on a run where they won like 9-11 or something like that. But they are still statistically the worst team in baseball. That's saying something. If you can go on 2 runs like that and you're still that bad. That being said, the Brewers are going to get swept by them. So, no, I'm just kidding. But one thing I want to hit on about this series is, and we saw it, I believe, last Friday in Pittsburgh, where the Brewers wore the Milwaukee Bears jerseys and Pittsburgh wore the Pittsburgh Crawfords jerseys. It's the Negro League Tribute Night in Milwaukee. That's one thing that we talked about, Jackie Robinson Day, when that came about earlier in the podcast as well. Negro League Tribute Night is one that I always make sure that I'm there for, and I love seeing that, seeing the different players that are still alive going out there, because that really makes a difference. Like, for me, I would have never been able to play baseball had it not been for a Jackie Robinson who went through the Negro Leagues, had it not been for a Dennis Biddle or a Satchel Paige or any of these guys who worked their way through discrimination, worked their way through unequal treatment, having to play in their own league just with people of their own skin color. And that's something that I think sometimes is forgotten about where baseball has come from. And I love when they're able to do nights like this and still bring in and honor people that were from them, because it's not a lot of guys left. There's very few that are able to get out to these events, and um, it's not always going to be around anymore. So I'm appreciative that we're still in a time where we're able to meet some of these people that are, I view as heroes. Um, so that's just a little anecdote I want to throw in because that's a big day for me, and I'm really excited because my dad and I are actually able to. Um, we're actually going to be on the field for batting practice on Friday for that tribute game. So it's going to be a good time, and I'm very excited for what's in store. And he was a guy that inspired me to really look into that stuff. And I remember one of my first baseball cards that I ever collected was of Josh Gibson, who very well could be the true home run leader if we're counting Negro League stats too. So um, everybody keep an eye out for that. It's really cool seeing them wear all the different uniforms and whatnot. So if you guys can, take a look into it. There's actually a guy in the area named Dennis Biddle who um, definitely shares a lot about the Negro Leagues and talks about what they were back in the day, and a lot of books out and whatnot. So, all right, let's get into yay or nays. Keston Hiura should have been the one. Keston Hiura should have been the one sent down for Travis Shaw. Yay or nay?
I have two different viewpoints. From a business perspective, organizational perspective, yay. My personal opinion, excuse
You
me.
all right?
Yeah, my personal opinion, nay. From a business perspective, I mean, yeah, we talked about first base where you obviously can't send Thames down. Aguilar's out of options, and you necessarily don't want to DFA somebody at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So, from a business perspective, it makes sense, and that's kind of how everything worked out. But personally, nay, just because I loved seeing him up here and watching him play and just kind of seeing kind of the first of your second wave of homegrown talent kind of come through into the majors and perform really well.
Right. You kind of took the words out of my mouth. I'll take it from an MLB The Show 19 perspective. I would just shifted here over to first base like we were talking about before. No harm, no foul in a video game, right? But no, I agree with you. From a business perspective, it only makes sense on the way that they're doing it. Just because you're in a logjam with him, he's not a guy that can play the outfield for you yet. I'm not saying that he's limited on different things, but we'll see. We'll see if they send him down there to develop a different spot, and I think it would benefit him. However, does he have the ability to do these different things? Who knows? And we'll see what happens when he does come back up. That being said, let's go right back to him. Keston Hiura is back in Milwaukee by the end of the month. Yay or nay?
Ooh, ooh, it depends.
Yeah.
I mean, it all comes down to somebody's injured,
Mm-hmm.
kind of what's going on from a pitching roster perspective, how Jesus Aguilar
Let's say
kind of
no one
goes.
gets hurt. No one gets hurt.
It still depends though, because if Jesus Aguilar continues to struggle, you start to
Mm-hmm.
think about DFAing him and moving Shaw to first base and then bringing Hira up. So it depends. That's a terrible answer, but that's how I'm gonna answer it.
No, that's fine because I'm with you there too. Like I'm actually gonna say yay. And as much as it makes me sad to say it, I don't know if Aguilar will be a member of the Brewers at that point. I think then you would have basically a lefty righty platoon going with Shaw and Hero, but whether that's some combination of whoever at first base or whatever it may be. Or I shouldn't say it would be like a Shaw Hira Thames situation. Um, with Shaw being the guy that flexes between both spots. But we will definitely see depending on what Aguilar does. Ideally, in a perfect world, Aguilar starts hitting the ball. Keston Hiura stays down in AAA. The Brewers are fine. They win the World Series. Then Keston Hiura is the second baseman next year. But who knows what will happen. Next one. Brewers will sweep Miami.
I'm gonna go nay. I mean, my whole outlook on baseball is just win
Win
series.
series.
So that's definitely my goal, to go into every series just to like win it, take 2 out of 3 if it's a 4 game split at the worst, otherwise go 3 out of 4. So just win the series. I don't care if they sweep it or not. That's kind of the sexy look on a series, but just win them and at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. And they'll win the series by sweeping them. So I'm gonna go yay. Uh, I I would be. The Brewers seem to be a team that wins when they are supposed to win, and those are the best teams to have. So I have a feeling that they are going to do just that and take these fish on their out of off of their hot streak that they may be on. Next one will be Christian Yelich maintains the home run lead through the rest of this week. Bellinger is on his tail with 20, and Pete Alonso is on his tail with 19.
Can I go with I don't care?
Stop. Pick one.
No. All I care about is production. I don't care where league standings are. That's ridiculous. I just want him to produce. And if that means taking the home run lead, sure. But I don't care.
So is he going to keep the home run lead or not? Yay or nay? That's all I'm asking.
To keep you happy, sure. Yay.
I'm going to say nay. I don't think he will. Cody Bellinger, I think, is going to overtake him or tie it, one of the two. So I don't think he'll have sole possession. Moving on. Next thing. The Marlins will never see production they wanted from Lewis Brinson.
Oh, this is my favorite topic because I could go on for days.
Because you put it down?
Yeah. And how the Marlins run their baseball team. I think it's the funniest thing ever. I don't see it. I mean, sure, it'd be nice if they do, but like, I don't think they're ever going to see it. I mean, sure, he looks pretty good right now from a minor league perspective, but then when you bring him up to the majors, he just like, he doesn't hit for crap. So I don't think they're ever going to see the production that they wanted to when they initially traded. Maybe a little bit, maybe kind of that fourth outfielder, but never what they wanted to in the beginning when the trade happened.
Well, and it's hard to say like what they were expecting. I mean, I shouldn't say what they were expecting. Obviously, they were expecting him to be a world beater, being able to get rid of. They were expecting him to come in and go through growing pains, which they allowed him to. But they didn't. He didn't grow. That was the problem. So I personally hope he does well. Like I want to see him do well. But yeah, I think he's going to end up being a guy that surfaces in the MLB and is a decent outfielder and plays. But what that looks like, I really don't know. He's been so hot and cold throughout his time that it's hard to see what can he really become. And like I said, I hope he produces. But yeah, I'm gonna go yay as well on that. They did just draft dude out of Vanderbilt, that Bleday guy. I think is JJ Bleday, and he has a lot of comps to Griffey, which is a pretty good comparison to have. So they seem to already be looking to retool and build up that outfield, unless they're, you also see teams do that and they're going to draft young talent to trade for pitching later on. But when you don't have any talent, he might be on a fast track to get himself up there pretty quick. Now we got a couple here that aren't necessarily yay or nay. They're going to be over unders. So with the two newcomers, or two guys that are coming back for the Brewers, Travis Shaw, and they're both over unders at 4.5. So Travis Shaw over under, or what do you have, over under at 4.5 hits this week?
I gotta go under. I'm being realistic here. We have 5 games if you count Sunday, and I don't picture him getting a hit every game. I mean, if he does, that's great. Like, way to go, Shaw. But I don't see it happening.
That's fair. I'm gonna go nay as well. It's hard to imagine him coming up and then just producing right away. But again, go out and prove us wrong. Make us look dumb. Over under Jimmy Nelson, 4.5 innings pitched on Wednesday.
I'm gonna go over if they don't. I don't know if they're gonna have any pitch limits on him.
I'm not sure either.
That. But if he doesn't, I'm going over just because he seems, from my visual knowledge, he seems like a guy driven by competition and kind of can't think of the word. You get the point. He seems to be driven by that, so I think I can't think of the word, but I think that'll take over for him, and maybe five innings, maybe a little bit more. Who knows? But I think it will be over 4.5.
I am going to go under. I think he's going to be. I think they're going to chunk that game. They seem to be, at least when I was listening to the radio, they're kind of saying, "Hey, they're looking to temper expectations for his performance." That's just my thoughts on what's probably going to happen, which I think he's going to come in and give you 3 or so. Maybe I think when his spot in the lineup comes up, they could possibly pinch hit for him. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I hope he's able to go longer. I mean, they've kept him down there for a while, so it seems like they're trying to build him up. But again, it's a big difference against pitching or hitters at this level versus hitters at the lower level. So again, we'll see what all goes down. Hopefully, he's able to give a good outing and not get hurt.
Adrenaline. That's the word. I think adrenaline.
There you go.
That's what I was thinking.
There you go.
Okay, move on.
Moving on. Oh, sorry, we forgot to mention. The Brewers took 3 out of 4 against the Pirates. That's pretty cool. And then they face them again this week. So that's another thing we're gonna see. So let's get into the week in review since we're talking Pirates. Pirates versus Brewers and whatnot, and Twins. So who's your highlight player this week?
I have to go with my guy. That's right, Andrew. My guy.
Your guy.
Orlando Arcia. I mean, he even last year he's shown that he's been quote unquote Mr. Clutch. I think he's had like 8 game-winning RBIs after like the 8th inning. I don't know. They were talking about that the other day on the broadcast. But not even that, just overall, like I wrote an article about this too, but he just looks so much more comfortable in the box and overall just seems like he's got it together again, which is great to see from a young ball player. So definitely shout out to him. Andrew, welcome back to the train. You're losing your chances here, but Orlando Arcia.
What are you talking about? I've been on it. I told you that I'm like, I still want him to do well. He just drives me nuts sometimes. So I'm there. Don't worry. I'm there. I didn't jump off. I haven't jumped off. But if you can get Tim Anderson. Yeah. Anyway.
That's not a commitment. I don't count that.
My highlight player is Keston Hiura.
That's awkward.
I know. But, I mean, he's the one that tied up the game on Saturday. And he's just been putting balls out of the yard left and right. He got a guy who's coming up as a rookie, three homers, 7 ribbies. Strikes out a lot, but over the course of 6 games, it's a lot of runs to be driving in, a lot of runs to be scoring at 5. So it's hard to see him go, but see what happens. I'm sure he'll be back relatively soon. Disappointment for this week.
I gotta go with good old Benjamin Gamel. He has been kind of killing me as of late. Luckily, Braun's been producing, so we really haven't needed him in the 4th outfield position as much as we did earlier in the season. But, man, he's killing me. I think in, like, the last 7 games, he's hit, like, 222, which I know I'm not batting average, but that was the first stat that came up, so I'm going to run with it. But just not seeing the production that we're kind of used to from the 4th outfielder. And maybe this is the player he is, which I hope it's not, but who knows?
So Braun's been producing. I was about to put him as the disappointment.
Why are you putting him as
he's hitting 182 over his last 7.
He's having good at bats, Andrew.
No, I don't disagree with you, but like he's not. But it's not productive outs either. That's the thing. Like he's hitting the ball. I mean, like when he's hitting them, he's getting into them, and he's got a couple doubles over that stretch. But again, I'm not off the bandwagon of Ryan Braun. Don't do that.
4 yesterday.
Okay, so yesterday, I'm just saying, like I'm not I'm not saying that he's having a bad season or that he's like turning into something bad at all. I'm just saying that like over the last week he hasn't hit like granted you're going to cool down at times and I get that, but he hasn't hit like he had been. So just the production had gone down a bit. So I agree with you that yes, you haven't had to worry about using a fourth outfielder with Braun producing and you're able to give other guys rest when you want to, but I don't think it's necessarily fair to say that he's been producing over the last couple series. That's the only thing that I'm saying. So yes, he did hit well yesterday. I'm not discrediting him in there, but let's hopefully he's able to spark it up and get crazy like he was over this homestand. Week preview. So again, Miami and Pittsburgh. Who needs a rebound for the Brewers?
I have good old Lorenzo Cain. Man, he's been killing me. I think for him when I know he's not like feeling good at the plate, he's striking out, and that's exactly what he's been doing. In his last 27 at bats, he struck out 6 times, which doesn't seem like a big number, but for him, that's a pretty dramatic number for him to be striking out that much because
Like
he's
second
always
most on the team in that span.
yeah, he's always just like, even if he's gotten out, he's put the ball in play. So I think for me that's been discouraging, and he's only walked once in that, which again kind of killing me inside because at bats haven't been as quality as we've always been used to seeing him. So he kind of needs to have a bounce back couple of series here over the week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like what's cool about Cain is that for him to be a guy that needs a rebound, hitting 260 is bad. But he still finds a way to, obviously he didn't get on base as much as you'd expect, but when he's on base, he's scoring, which is a positive for him. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen when he starts hitting it again and sparking up a little bit. My rebound guy is Junior Guerra. And that's simply based off of Saturday giving up pretty big shot when he did. And I mean, Woodruff didn't do him a lot of favors either to start it off. So you had hot bats coming into it. So seeing Junior Guerra come back into a lockdown role that he had been a bit, that would be great to see. With Corbin Burns starting to come into his own as well. Who needs to chill out for the Pirates?
For the Pirates, I have
Sorry, for the Pirates and Miami.
Well, I'll start with the Pirates. For the Pirates, I have
Fair.
Adam Frazier. Not necessarily the most glorious looking dude on paper, but he's been a Brewer killer, man. Like over the last 3 years, all he's done is just hit against us, and we saw it again in this past series. So definitely Adam Frazier from the Pirates' perspective, and from the from Miami perspective, I have Harold Ramirez. He's just been hitting the ball
Big
well.
name, big guy, Harold Ramirez.
He is a big dude. He's been hitting the he's been hitting the ball.
I have no idea who he is.
Are you serious?
Was that? No, I know who he is.
No idea who he is.
Harold Ramirez. I'm just saying, he's not a guy that like jumped off the paper of like I haven't really heard much about this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like he started off the year in AAA and then had since moved up. He's played 18 games in the majors so far, and is just hitting the crap out of the ball. I mean, in 72 plate appearances, he has 61 hits, 4 home runs. Oh, wait. 67 at-bats, 25 hits, and 1 home run. So definitely watch out for him.
He's hitting well. Yeah. I mean, I just I had no idea really much about this dude. So once you put him down, I looked around. I'm like, oh yeah, he can stick it a little bit. So I got for the Pirates, I got Brian Reynolds and Elias Diaz. Catcher power there with Diaz. Both of them are tearing the cover off the ball. Reynolds is getting on base at a 553 clip and scoring runs. So he's been a fire starter for them at the top of the lineup. And then Elias Diaz has solidified himself over over Francisco Cervelli as their guy behind the dish, and he's doing it at the plate, driving in runs, 8 RBI over his last 7. He's been hot as can be. So hopefully those are two bats that they can keep suppressed. Now I'm looking at their last 7, and I'm seeing the guy at the top of their average rankings is Alex McRae. I have a little story about Alex McRae. Well, Alex McRae is from Wisconsin, specifically from New Berlin. He went to New Berlin Eisenhower. So he graduated the same year I did from high school in 2012. One day, we show up to play New Berlin Eisenhower. Really weird for us because we didn't typically play them. Well, show up to Ike, and something happened where we had a guy who was a late scratch. So couldn't play that day. Something was bothering him. I think it was something in warm-ups, hammy, something like that. Well, I get penciled into the lineup to go play right that day for that kid. Well, he was at the top of the lineup. I'm hitting 1. First time I've ever let off in a game. Typically, I was in the 3 to 6 range when I would hit. Well, we're facing off against probably the best pitcher in Wisconsin at this point, who's sitting high 80s, 90s. I've been hit by a number of pitches before. This one hurt real bad, and he put it right in my back, right to begin with. First pitch of the game, no way of me getting out of the way, puts it right in my spine. That thing hurt. For me, my game was stealing bases. I got given the steal sign about 3 times. That next at bat, I was not going. I was in too much pain, and I didn't want to let anyone know it. So I didn't go. My next at bats against him, I didn't take the bat off my shoulder. He sent a message right away, and he set the tone early that I wasn't going to be swinging against him. So it's cool to see him in the MLB, like seeing a guy that you face going out there and performing and being a guy for an MLB team. So that's pretty cool to see. Anyway, for Miami, I'm going to stick with the catcher power and go with Jorge Alfaro. There's not a lot of big names on this team, but he's a guy that can throw guys out left and right from behind the plate, and he's putting balls out of the yard too. So in his last 4 games, 15 at bats, 2 home runs, 7 RBI, 8 hits. He's been hot too. So we'll be running into 2 really hot hitting catchers, which isn't something that you're seeing every single day typically. So it's kind of fun for me as a former catcher to be able to see that. Who needs to stay consistent for the Brewers?
I put down good old Zach Davies. I mean, he put on a really, really good showing yesterday with I wouldn't say not having his good stuff because he had really good stuff, but with allowing quite a few guys on base, but still being able to get out of quite a few jams. So Zach Davies, shout out to that man. I mean, he put up 8 innings when we needed it most once again. So Zach Davies, it's good to see him going out there and being a strong pitcher.
Yeah, eating up innings for the pen. That's the name of his game lately. So they owe him something, that's for sure. I'd say for me, going into the pen, it would be for the guy who keeps complaining we don't talk about Josh Hader enough. Josh Hader. He's the NL reliever of the week. So that'd be great to continue to see that from him, other than the shot that he gave up the other day. So again, guy who said that we don't talk about Josh Hader enough. There you go. Corbin Burnes is another one. You're starting to see him settle back into his role. So seeing him continue to do that, seeing both of those guys be just fireballers to be able to light things up for him will be great. Who's got a big week coming this week?
I just put down Jimmy Nelson just from both an emotional perspective and from a playing perspective as well. I mean, to think it's been 21 months since he stepped on the mound in a major league game is crazy. Like, I mean, I'm so excited to just see him back on the mound and hopefully pitch decently well. Like, I mean, I don't have that high of expectations just because it's been 21 months. But I think just for him, it's just going to be a big week pitching on his, I believe, 30th birthday, maybe. So overall, a big week for him.
Yeah, sure is. So I think regardless, it's a big week. So you can't really go wrong just saying him. That's for sure. I got two. I'm gonna say Eric Thames, and I have a little prediction for him, so I'll get into it later. But so you wrote me off as being a Ryan Braun fan, basically. I have Ryan Braun written as having a big week, so chill out with the slander. So he's gonna get back into it. You're seeing is reminiscent a little bit of I think it was 2 years ago when um, he did kind of get written off, but then he hit 280 something, and he was actually kind of a fringe MVP look. I think he finished in the high teens for voting, but still that's impressive for a guy who was viewed as being done. So this is a very similar to the statistics he put up that year. So we will hopefully continue to see him mash balls. All right, what's your prediction for this week?
So if I'm correct, we still do not have a picture posted for Thursday with Chacin and Gonzalez going on to the IL.
You are correct in that. In saying that.
So I've talked about this before and how I'm a huge fan of this. I want to see the Hauser Peralta split start.
Yeah.
It worked out great the last time. I think Hauser went 3-ish innings and Peralta finished up with maybe around 4. I think it's perfect because I started to think about Peralta maybe starting, but then I remembered he can't pitch in the first inning. It just doesn't end up well. Mm-hmm. So I think I would love to see kind of that Hauser Peralta split start once again.
No. It didn't work out too well for him the other day. Granted, he was thrown into a little rough situation on Friday, but hopefully that's something that they can work out and it's able to be successful with him being able to anticipate this is when I'm going into this ball game. My bold prediction, and this is why I have him having a big week, Eric Thames is going to hit 4 tanks this week. He's been on fire at the dish, and I think you're going to see something a little bit of a 2017 Eric Thames. So that being said, let's wrap this bad boy up. Any questions, comments, concerns from you, Miss Olivia?
No.
Sweet. All right. As always, go Brewers and have a great week, everyone.